One. Welcome again to another episode of the Hero Podcast. It's going to be a straight 30 minutes. Let's see what we can do. My name is Ryan G from ADS Online Data Strategy with my co-host Pete Kirkwood, and we have a special guest, of course, Ryan Curtis. What's up, Ryan? Pete, what's the topic of today?
Today, I wanted to get into one of the really big ones. It's critical. It's failure. Because failure is something that we all experience.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter if you are 3 months old and you're trying to walk, you're going to fail. You're going to experience that failure. It doesn't matter if you're trying to ask a girl out for the first time. It doesn't matter if you're trying to learn how to drive, if you're sitting a test at school, or if you're, starting a new business. Like, failure's right there, and there's a good chance that it's going to happen. So how do we deal with it? Because a lot of the time as humans, we have these habits where we just don't think about something and we try and push it away, and we just try and ignore it and pretend it's not on.
Right.
Instead of being like, well, how do I get to grips with it? Because if you really look at failure, what it says is that you've done something, right? To fail, firstly, you have to attempt. So whatever it is that you want to do, you got to take some action before you can fail. And your mind will tell you a whole bunch of things about failing before you even take the action, especially if you've failed before, right? It'll stop you from attempting. There's a fear of failure that kicks in. Then as you step forward and as you do, there is some kind of an expectation of a result in your mind. If you decide that you're going to jump off the step, if your criteria for achievement are for you to leave the step, then that's really easy. But if it's to make it across a certain distance to another point, well, then you can fail by falling short. So if you think I'm going to jump 10 meters, you're setting yourself up for failure simply because of your expectation. If you think I'm just going to jump down a foot down to the ground, your expectation is so low that you almost can't fail. So there's a big mental component towards whether our action that we take is successful or not. It can be quite objective in a way that I'm attempting to eat this apple. If the apple doesn't go in my mouth and get eaten, it's obviously a failure, no matter what someone can't be like, well, you kind of got it in your nose. It's quite clear. But other things, it really comes down to it. And when you paint the difference, right, failure to live is a very clear line, right? You're either dead or you're not. So it depends on how you start defining a failure. And then as soon as you start realizing that this thing isn't quite as concrete or not, because if I was to say my goal is to be famous, whether I live or not isn't relevant. There's lots of famous dead people. So if I die becoming famous, that's not necessarily a failure. But if my goal is to stay alive, then it looks like a failure. When anyone would normally say, well, death's guaranteed failure. But again, we start to think about it in different ways. And everyone has different relationships with failure. How would I put it? One of the classic ones, right? When people go to the gym, they often specifically work out to fail. Boom, you know exactly what I'm talking about, right?
Oh, yeah.
We aim to break, to hit that point where someone who goes to the gym, they have a healthy relationship with failure in that moment. And from your perspective, what do you see as some healthier ways of thinking about failure, right? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
That's a really good question, Pete. Things that came up for me have a lot to do with what is the true perspective on failure. And the more we think about it, or I think about it, the more I start to
Mm,
realize failure can be used as a tool.
mm,
As, let's say, from an academic background, the whole idea of training and testing, let's say data through machine learning, is mandatory because we have to test our assumptions.
mm.
Hence, the failure becomes a form of testing. Does what I initially thought truly work? In the business scenario, it's simply testing assumptions because assumptions are the true failure, so to speak. Because if
Beautiful.
I did not test whether a weapon worked, or a process worked, or a plan worked, we will ultimately break our company, which is not the point. The true point is to almost use the step of failure as a step of testing out your prowess. Like how you would step onto the martial arts message, test out your martial arts prowess. You have to. It is how you would say every tournament you partake in would be equal to about 100 training sessions on a regular day. And the reason why they say that is because it doesn't get any more quote unquote real than truly being tested. If you
Yeah.
take on the more physical aspect of training, be it simple calisthenics, body workouts, or the the drilling of techniques, or the testing of business theories towards your specific business case within your company. It's all
Mhm.
about finding, let's say, the bottlenecks in order to improve upon. A bottlenecks would simply be if you are to move from point A to point B and you draw a straight line, what breaks, what gets in the way. If we were to take the hero's journey as a process, right? And between the point of the hero getting an epiphany and the hero having to go through that pain in order to reach that epiphany,
Mm.
you start to realize, as what's his name? Ryan Holiday, I believe, the obstacle becomes the way. Having to go through the struggle should not be seen as the failure, and even I'm guilty of it.
Yes, we've
It's
all
not
done that for sure.
exactly. It's about finding leisure in the struggle. That's what the masters of all do. It's how when a master from a certain background goes to another sector, another art, he often performs very well because he is a true master, because he understands the mentality behind I'm supposed to enjoy the struggle while I can, because at some point I will miss it. Pete, your thoughts?
That is such an excellent point, right? If you've become a master in one field and you look to another field, your success is very like your success comes quicker almost.
Yeah.
And I was discussing this actually with a client on a call today who called me up, and we were talking about as he goes um, into the realm of politics, his previous experience will actually shine through quite strongly
Mhm.
because it has set him up to stand out head and shoulders above the competition.
I see.
And it a master that has been through a process that has learned has already generated a healthy relationship with failure. And how that relationship is defined, it's a thing of choice. However, this is almost like I spoke on a fireside chat yesterday. That
Okay.
video is going up on YouTube as well. I've got to upload that, but it's about emotion as a choice and about how you find the choice. When it comes to failure, we often don't realize we have a choice in defining our failures, because when I'm learning to walk, how I define failure is it's like so little of my attention that as a child I just want to go towards dad or mum or food or whatever it is that's giving me a reason to walk, right? I've seen other people do it. I want to be like the adults, whatever it is. The thought of failure, it's like, it's not even a thing, right? Like, it's not even a thing. Like, I just start doing. And when it doesn't work, I just do again. I don't even get into a relationship with it. Then we get older and it becomes a pressure from society or um, who are watching you and observing, and they're putting a judgment on you. So, you're like, oh, what are people going to think if I don't get it right? And then it's like, you get a bad maths test and then you get told you're bad at math. So you always think I'm bad at math. And then there's a voice in your head that's already, and all of a sudden, as we get older, this relationship with failure becomes these huge storylines and epic tales and nightmarish demons in our head. And we just get to the point where we're adults and then we realize that hang on, I never took responsibility for writing how failure works in my life. I mean, this can be anything. This can be, for me, I remember I grew up with just totally in the wrong direction, older women, right? My mum said it didn't work out with your dad because I was older than him. So my entire life, I thought I could never date a girl who's older than me. I didn't realize it was a month until I was already fully grown, like until I was an adult. I didn't realize my mum's birthday is the month before my dad, and it was a joke. And so all of these relationships I could have had, I just totally discredited. Said it was not even going to happen. But it's silly because I'd written that story, and we do it in crazy things. Like whether we consider ourselves rich or consider ourselves poor, or whether we consider ourselves athletic or physically fit or smart or good with money, we tell ourselves these stories. And failure is probably one of the biggest that we don't even realize what a story we've written.
That's very interesting. The
Because
reason, Mhm.
go for it.
The reason why I'm saying is I myself start to realize that, seeing how I'm hearing it again for I think the fifth time this week, is that a lot of people tell themselves a very dysfunctional story about themselves. Like the whole idea of you are both the marble and the sculptor, as well as the future statue of of a being of Olympus, let's say, of whatever
Mm-hmm.
god, and it's very much in line with what is the story you tell yourself about you. Because here's the thing, I remember being a young child that went through it all, went
Yes.
through what is the difference between 6-year-old Ryan and 13-year-old Ryan, besides the hormones and the puberty and you name it, the story and the hair and it's in the story I told myself. There's this story I tell everyone that has any background in martial arts, where as a 5 me 6 year old kid, my dad would have put me in Kaikushikai karate. Now I was barely there 2 weeks and it was exams. Now I was invited to watch, but no one expected me to actually do the exam because I was just there for 2 weeks. And they have, let's say, a quote unquote open mat. And I didn't even consider, you know, whether I would get a belt. I just did it because I enjoyed it. And I went there and I did some bullshit activity, and the whole crowd cheering, my so-called friends cheering, the grandmaster that's laughing his ass off because I am doing, somersaults that has nothing to do with karate, um, and random kicks, low kicks, and you name it. And he decided to stop the exam just to talk to me. Asked the crowd who my parents are. My my dad, being a martial artist himself, kind of embarrassingly raised his hand because he already knew he might either be chewed out or there's going to be made a joke. And he's just anticipating like where is this going to go. And that fear can also be seen as like, oh, the fear of failure, you know? And because that's
Totally.
my kid, I don't know where this will go. This might
Yeah.
scar my kid for life. And as if I'm his kid, the Grandmaster took me by the hand, brought me to his dad, and loudly proclaimed, "Is this your kid?" My dad said, "Yes." And he said, "This kid will absolutely become a black belt." He took me up, gave it to my father, and he continued the exam. And that gave my father such a boost of adrenaline and euphoria. While this could easily have gone wrong, easily.
That
And
that is a beautiful story.
what did you get out of this?
Like that I see, right? That is such an example of a man in a position of a lot of power. In that moment, the Grand Master has a lot of power,
Mm-hmm,
and how he uses it really speaks to his character,
mm-hmm,
right? Because technically, you are failing. You are messing up the exam and probably getting in the way of other people. But you don't know that. You're just having fun. You're a child in the moment, living life, and really, actually giving it your all.
oh yeah.
The concept of failure is not there. Your father, he's an actor in this as well. He's invested in this because he understands it from an adult's perspective and how serious or not, quote unquote, everything is.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that the Grandmaster treats the situation, that's like a perfect framing. He says the failure of this child to be strict, disciplined, um, and basically anxious about succeeding in this exam is actually a gift, because without his anxiety about being successful in the exam, his pure enthusiasm for the art shines through, and that is what carries someone to being a black belt. And as a child, that is the thing that will carry you to being a black belt if you hear it. Hearing that you are getting it wrong in any way will not give you that motivation. Like anything he had have said that was negative would not have inspired you to reach for the dream. But instead, he reframed it in a positive way. He found something about it that was good enough like to respect, to honor in what you were offering, and praise that. And did it in such a, like, I want to say dramatic, but that's not quite maybe the right word. Like using showmanship, he commanded the attention of everybody in a way that no one could really get away with actually saying anything against his frame. Otherwise, they'd look stupid. If anyone
Mm-hmm.
was like, yeah, he's just doing it for that kid, everyone would be like, are you such, wow, wow, really? You're going to be like that? As opposed to just kind of trying to shuffle it out of sight, where people snicker behind their back. He made it a thing in such a way. It's quite masterful. It's a beautiful reframe. You see where I'm coming from?
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. He used the situation to empower basically his academy, while also giving the reward of validation to a very young child and of course his parents.
Correct.
And
Yes.
I remember the feeling very fondly, even though I didn't quite understand, because me being the smart ass kid that I was, looked at the teacher and went, "Okay, cool. So where is my black belt?" And of course, the whole crowd laughed. Me, I don't know better. And of course, this has been a running joke for years. For
Yep.
years. And of course, I switched from karate to taekwondo because of the distance and blah blah. And every time this grandmaster would meet my dad, he would always ask the question, Did he make it? Where is he? What happened? Please tell me the stories. And I remember my dad telling me, he told him along the lines of, oh, he's this kind of belt, that kind of belt. He's um, learning to become a true martial artist in his own way. And funny
Mm.
enough, it is almost as if I had to, go back to the child. As I said in Fabnation with the scripts, Sumit, is going back to Monkey. It is going back to what's truly fundamental to my character as the
Mm.
pure, unfiltered enjoyment of the fight, as an expression of who I am. And I realized that during my red belt exam, where I was pretty much beat to beat to absolutely crap, like black and blues, trained for 5 hours and then had to do an exam. Plus the katas, plus I had to fight with fresh fighters that are competitive level, and you need to dig deep. And if you're not enthusiastic about what you're about, it's going to be very hard to do with failure. One example was I walked into a back kick. Now, if you don't know how a back kick feels, I can tell you a well placed back kick is horrible, especially against the liver, the spleen, the head. Now, I was caught in the solar plexus, so all the air out of my lungs was gone, and I walked into it. So I fell straight to the ground. And then this asshole of, and this is not a grandmaster, this asshole of a grandmaster yelled out into the crowd, "You have 10 seconds to get up, or I will disqualify you from the exam." You need to realize it's been 5 hours. I have barely ate. We barely had a rest. My muscles are burning. This is old school martial arts. This is not the new movement of taking it easy. There's nothing easy about this. This is earned. I had to dig deep and almost be offended by the fact, like, excuse me? All right, it is how you want to play it. Let's fucking go. I don't care if I don't get my belt. I'll be damned if people laugh in my face. I'm going to kill someone. So if might as well start with my opponent, and this is a professional, well, semi-professional fighter.
Yeah,
I get up, I scream alongside, and I continue that fight. I still lost because it is a professional fighter. It's almost impossible to win. His dexterity is amazing, but I'll be damned. And it's almost in that honey badger attitude, like, oh, good on you for catching me off guard with that back kick. Now it's my turn. And it's almost that ferocious enthusiasm, like, oh,
mm.
I have seen the error of my ways. Thank you for pointing it out. I could have easily have seen this as, let's say, a falling back to self-pity and blah blah blah. You know how I relate to the event of quote unquote failure.
Yep,
But instead, now that I'm in more pain, oh, it's game over. Now it's we have to pay in blood. And we
totally.
did. The next day I got my red belts, proudly. Hell yeah. Next day I
Hell
couldn't
yeah.
get up. I couldn't get up. My shins were black and blue, my ribs were bruised. There was a black and blue spot on my solar plexus. That's how hard he kicked me. And I couldn't get
Shit.
up. It's, you know, when you have to do a sit up, but you can't because it hurts?
Hmm.
That's how it felt. But I couldn't help but feel very proud, even though I was beaten black and blue. Your thoughts, Pete?
It, it's interesting how you bring that up. The proud about being the black and blue, right? It's not about the pain. Um, Firstly, just I see how when you talk about fighting and martial arts and all the rest of it, like I just want to point this out for people listening, how much of a healthy relationship you have with failure, right? There is zero negative um, attachment in you towards getting it wrong, losing, being hurt, all of the things people would consider a failure in martial arts, right? I mean, maybe the one thing you didn't touch on was like not turning up would be considered a failure, and you wouldn't do that, right? You love it too much, so you can't even fail by not turning up because you're gonna always be giving it your all. You've got that investment in it, so you can't not give it enough. You can't fail like that, and all the other things you don't care, so you can't fail when you're getting into your martial arts in that way. And it's so amazing how sometimes we think about that with things in our life, like video gaming, right? I can't fail. As long as I'm playing the game, I'm enjoying myself and having fun. It doesn't matter how many times I die. Some people take it too seriously. Some people, man, as long as I'm working and I'm out there and I'm getting a paycheck every week, it doesn't matter. I'm getting there. Other people are like, oh, I didn't get this and I didn't get this done and I wanted that done. And they're endless complaints. And they feel like constant failure is never good enough in their workplace. They never give themselves credit. And it's in our mind and in our choice to choose that. So that demonstrates that healthy relationship. And it's funny when you talk about the black and blue, because I didn't come from that fighting background. I didn't grow up with that kind of stuff. I never discovered any kind of physical respect for my body until my early to mid 20s. Like I was like 23, I think, the first time I ever actually said, fuck this, let's do something physical. But I remember going to a concert when I was a bit younger, and I had the attitude of like, I don't give a fuck, man. Like, these guys are my favorite. This is their farewell tour. I don't care that I'm tiny, that I'm small, anything, and all these people are bigger and tougher than me. I'm going to the front. So I got all the way to the front, and I was up there against these steel bars. And I was like amongst the girls, because the girls were there with gigantic hero, like goth men behind them who were like, you know, this is my date. I bring her to the front of the concert and then I take her home. Like, I know how to play this game. And don't you like fucking even try. I'm just going to crush you if you distort the fact she's having a good time. And I'm trying to get in between these guys and these chicks and get right up the front. And I got right up there. And I was getting destroyed. I was getting crushed, but I was having a great time. And eventually it got to the point where I was dehydrated. I needed to get out. I'd been there for like 45 minutes, and I signaled one of the bouncers. And I was like, yo, yo. And he like came over and he pulls me out of the thing into the little like line they have where they get you out. For, you know, it's the gap between the stage. And I'm pretty sure like I didn't quite high five, but I definitely managed to touch the hand of the lead singer at one point during the performance. Like, it was fucking awesome. And I got out, and he got me down the side and off the thing and out around the back of the crowd. And I got a water from the bar, and I walked out of the venue and got some air. And I was like, cool. Well, now that I've gotten a breath, I want to be back there. So I just went straight back through exactly all of the pain and suffering and everything that I'd had to overcome in the first place, not even once thinking about how hard it was or whether I could or whether I couldn't or any of that stuff, and just smashed it to the front and got back to the front again through all those same obstacles. And the same bouncer recognized me, and he was like, what are you doing? I just saved you from this. Why are you here again 5 minutes later? And, you know, the gig went on, the concert finished, blah, blah, blah. And the next day I was at work. And at that time I used to just work at Subway. I did sandwiches. And I remember that bouncer came through to get a sandwich just randomly and recognized me, and I recognized him. And he was like, hey, you were at the concert last night? And I was like, yeah, you were the guy that pulled me out, right? He was like, yeah, dude, you were getting crushed. I was like, yeah. And I like remember lifting up my shirt, and I was black and blue. I was completely thing. And you think in any measurement, right, that's the most my body had ever been abused in my life to create that kind of damage. But there was no thought of it being a failure in my mind, because in my mind, it was only possible to be a win. The story around that injury wasn't even relevant. Like, the injury wasn't even relevant. It was a badge of pride. It was a war wound of what I'd been through to achieve. And we get this ability to write these stories and do these things. And that's one of the things I've really been finding successful when I've been working with people in these calls. Everyone gets a free one for free. If you're interested, hit me up. We frame things in a way where it's how you're writing your story, and you're creating things where failure can start to take on new meanings and success can take on new meanings. It's not just about money, it's about relationships and about health and about happiness and fulfillment.
Mm-hmm.
All of these words, we can reframe them, we can rewire them. And we haven't really spoken too much about being a hero, but heroes have that really, really good relationship with failure. It's part of the hero's journey. There's the trials, the tribulations, the learning, the practicing. God, I haven't even said one of my favorite quotes. Practicing is doing, failing, and then doing it again. That's all it is. You go to sports practice, you
Mm-hmm.
kick, you miss the goal. You kick, you miss the goal. You kick, you miss the goal. You do it for half an hour until you get the goal, and you just keep doing it. So when the match is on, your skills are sharp because you already got the failure out of the way. You're getting it
Right.
over and done.
Right. True
You were going to say,
success. Yeah, this is a great ending note. Winston Churchill, as much as I don't necessarily like the guy, he does make a great point on, for history reasons concerning India. Um, Success is having the enthusiasm, almost a childlike enthusiasm, walking from failure to failure without losing it. And it's in that coloring, it's like what AZD says on The Flirty Puppy. I do not care if I get rejected by women. I do not care if I get rejected by potential clients that are currently prospects. What I do care about is the adventure that I go on. It is ultimately, I think, the cure to, the toxic failure mentality is the story you tell yourself and the relationship you have with it, meaning the enthusiasm that you can have. So ultimately, you can use failure not only to get the battle scars, which is bragging without bragging, but to go through an experience that can aid the story you tell yourself to encourage you, to empower you, to heal you. One mantra that I use, and Ryan Curtis knows about this, is when I train to failure. There's a very specific mantra I use. I cannot count because I'm going through failure. I'm pushing, I'm finding the pain point, pushing where I have nothing else to rely on but my willpower and my strictness in technique. And every time I breathe out, I say, heal me, empower me, let me find the pain. Seek it, seek adversity, and you shall be rewarded for finding it because it is what you sought. Adversity is what makes a hero strong. And if you need help with, I'm speaking to the viewers and listeners, if you need help finding the right tools, Pete Kirkwood, the real Pete Kirkwood, is the hero maker for you, is the king builder. He makes your kingdom, he helps you build it. While I, if you have a kingdom in the form of a business, helps you find the pain points because that's what we want when we are to improve. What works is great, but in order to outcompete your competition and be the go to professional or business in whatever sector, you need to not only have something that works, but something that works even better in relation to your competition, in relation to your clients, in relation to your whole company. So just do it. Pete, how will we end this?
I think you really covered it. It's about being able to reframe it, take control of it, change it. And like you said, it's that big picture of how you reframe anything
Mhm.
from failure to success and everything in between. I can help you with that. I've proven that every single person I've spoken to has been blown away. My testimonials speak for themselves. Even people who are very amazed, who are very skilled on these arts, look at the way people speak about what I do and they're impressed. Um, so that's and just absolutely clear. I've seen your results. They're just available. The real thing is just taking action and not being afraid to do it. And I'll be honest, today my workout's been delayed, but after this, I'm fucking fired up, man.
Oh yeah.
I'm smash the shit out of that to failure. And then I've got a fair bit of other stuff on. I've had a whole busy day and it never stops. But that's what we love about it, because I just want to keep going. No, that's it. That's the end of this one. Till next week. Wrap it up, Brian.
Thank you, Curtis.
Welcome.
This has been the Hero Podcast. My name is Ryan G from ADS Online Data Strategy with my co-host, the real Pete Kirkwood from the Hero Maker business. I hope you had a fantastic listening experience, viewing experience, and may your life never be the same. Good night.